The October wind cut through the courthouse steps like a blade, carrying with it the scent of dying leaves and the bitter taste of desperation. Ana Rodriguez clutched her worn jacket tighter around her swollen belly, her 6-month pregnancy making the simple act of standing a challenge. The baby kicked restlessly inside her, as if sensing the tension that hung in the air like morning fog over the Texas hill country. Sheriff Marcus Caldwell's voice boomed across the small crowd that had gathered in the town square of Cedar Ridge, population 3,200. His badge caught the pale sunlight, but there was nothing lawful about what was happening here. Ana had heard whispers about these auctions, how desperate people with unpaid debts were essentially sold to the highest bidder under the guise of work contracts to pay off what they owed. Next up, we have Ana Rodriguez, Caldwell announced, his voice carrying the practiced authority of a man who had long ago stopped questioning the morality of his actions. 22 years old, pregnant, owes $3,200 in back rent to Millfield Properties. Strong worker, good with cleaning and cooking. Anna's cheeks burned with humiliation. The baby's father had disappeared the moment she told him about the pregnancy, leaving her alone in a 1-bedroom apartment she could barely afford on her minimum wage job at the local diner. When she lost that job due to morning sickness, the rent had piled up like storm clouds on the horizon. The crowd was small but familiar, the same faces that showed up to these monthly spectacles. There was old Pete Williams, who ran a struggling farm and always needed cheap labor. Martha Hendricks, who owned the boarding house and had a reputation for working her contract workers 18 hours a day. And there, standing apart from the others with his worn cowboy hat pulled low over his eyes, was Cole Brennan. Ana had seen Cole around town but had never spoken to him. He was the kind of man who commanded attention without trying, tall and broad-shouldered, with weathered hands that spoke of years of hard work. But there was something in his posture, a loneliness that seemed to emanate from him like heat from sun-baked earth. She'd heard the stories about what happened to his family 3 years ago, the car accident that took his wife Sarah and their 8-year-old daughter Emma in a single, devastating moment. "Do I hear opening bids?" Caldwell continued, his eyes scanning the crowd with the cold efficiency of a livestock auctioneer. Pete Williams raised his hand. 200. Martha Hendricks countered immediately. 400. Girl that young can work off the debt in 6 months, easy. Ana felt sick. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, and she pressed her hand to her stomach protectively. This couldn't be happening. This was America, the 21st century. People weren't sold like property. But here she was, standing on courthouse steps while strangers bid on her future. Cole Brennan stepped forward, his boots echoing on the concrete. $3,200. The crowd fell silent. Even Caldwell looked surprised. It was more than enough to cover Anna's debt entirely, with no need for a work contract at all. That's the full amount, Caldwell stammered, clearly not expecting someone to simply pay off the debt outright. That's right, Cole said, his voice steady and deep. Cash. He pulled out a roll of bills from his jacket pocket, money that Ana suspected represented a significant portion of his savings. Martha Hendricks stepped forward, her face twisted with greed. Now hold on, Cole. That's not how this works. The girl needs to work off her debt. $500 and I'll take her for a full-year contract. The debt is $3,200, Cole replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. I'm paying it in full. Right now. Sheriff Caldwell looked around nervously. The system worked because everyone understood the unspoken rules. Desperate people were auctioned off to work for pennies on the dollar, enriching both the property owners who were owed money and the people who employed them. Someone actually paying the full debt disrupted everything. But Cole was already counting out the bills, placing them in Caldwell's reluctant hands. The $3,200. The young lady's debt is paid. Ana stared at this stranger who had just bought her freedom without asking for anything in return. She tried to speak, to thank him, but the words caught in her throat. The relief was overwhelming. She wasn't going to Martha's boarding house, wasn't going to be worked like a slave until her baby was born and beyond. Cole turned to her for the first time, his brown eyes meeting hers. Up close, she could see the pain etched in the lines around his eyes, the weight of loss that he carried like a physical burden. "Ma'am," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "I'm Cole Brennan. I run a ranch about 10 miles outside town. If you need a place to stay until you get back on your feet, you're welcome to it. No strings attached." The crowd was dispersing, many of them grumbling about the disruption to their expected entertainment. Martha Hendricks shot Cole a venomous look before stalking away, and Pete Williams spat in the dust before shuffling off to his truck. "I don't understand," Anna managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Cole was quiet for a long moment, looking out over the dispersing crowd. "I know what it's like to lose everything," he said finally. "And I know what it's like when people turn their backs on what's right because it's easier than standing up." Sheriff Caldwell pocketed the money and walked away without another word, but Anna caught the look of irritation on his face. She realized that Cole hadn't just paid her debt, he'd thrown a wrench into a system that had been operating in the shadows for who knows how long. As they walked toward Cole's pickup truck, Anna felt the baby settle down, as if it too sensed that the immediate danger had passed. But she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Cole had saved her from one fate, but in doing so, he'd revealed something dark about Cedar Ridge that some people would do anything to keep hidden. "Mr. Brennan," she said as he opened the passenger door for her. "Cole," he corrected gently. "Cole, what you did back there, it wasn't just about helping me, was it?" He paused, his hand on the door handle. "No, I reckon it wasn't." He looked back toward the courthouse, where Sheriff Caldwell was deep in conversation with a man in an expensive suit, someone Anna didn't recognize but who clearly wielded influence in the town. "These auctions," Cole continued, "they've been going on for 2 years now. Ever since the economy took a downturn and people started struggling with rent and debts. I've watched good people disappear into contracts that never seem to end, working for nothing while the sheriff and his friends get rich." Anna climbed carefully into the truck, her mind racing. "So why now? Why help me?" Cole closed the door and walked around to the driver's side, taking his time before answering. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with emotion. "Because I'm tired of watching people suffer while I do nothing. Because my Sarah would be ashamed of me for staying silent this long." He started the engine, the truck rumbling to life. "And because sometimes, doing the right thing is the only way to live with yourself." As they drove away from the courthouse, Anna looked back at the town of Cedar Ridge, nestled in the valley like a postcard-perfect American community. But now she knew the truth that lay beneath the surface, a truth that she and Cole would soon have to confront, whether they were ready or not. The baby kicked again, and Anna placed both hands on her belly. Whatever came next, her child would be born free. That much, at least, Cole had given them both. The Brennan Ranch stretched out before them like something from a different era, all rolling pastures and weathered fence posts under the vast Texas sky. Cole's truck crunched along the gravel driveway, past a red barn that had seen better days and corrals where a few horses grazed peacefully in the afternoon sun. The main house was modest but well-maintained, a single-story structure with a wraparound porch that spoke of quieter times. Anna felt a knot in her chest loosen slightly as they pulled up to the house. After months of cramped apartment living and the terror of the morning's auction, the open space felt like a balm to her frayed nerves. Cole parked and came around to help her out of the truck, his movements careful and respectful of her condition. "It's not much," he said, seeming suddenly self-conscious about his home. "But it's clean and warm, and there's plenty of room." "It's beautiful," Anna replied honestly, taking in the peaceful scene. A border collie came trotting up from the barn, tail wagging tentatively. "That's Rex," Cole said, his voice softening as he scratched the dog's ears. "He's good company, though he's been a bit lonely lately." As they walked toward the house, Anna noticed details that spoke of the family that had once lived here: a child's swing hanging from an oak tree, its paint faded but the chains still strong. Flower pots along the porch that had been carefully tended, though the flowers were now dormant for the winter. This had been a home filled with love, and the echoes of that love still lingered in every corner. Inside, the house was exactly what Anna had expected: comfortable furniture arranged around a stone fireplace, family photos scattered on side tables, A kitchen that smelled faintly of coffee and something else she couldn't identify. It wasn't until Cole quickly moved to turn over a photograph on the mantel that Anna realized what the other scent was: the lingering fragrance of a woman's perfume, preserved in fabrics and memories. "The guest room is down the hall," Cole said, his voice carefully neutral. "It has its own bathroom, and there's a view of the pasture out back. I've got some things to take care of in the barn, so you can get settled." But Anna didn't want to be alone just yet. The events of the morning still felt surreal, and she needed to understand what she'd gotten herself into. "Cole," she said, settling carefully onto the sofa. "What happened at the courthouse today? How long has that been going on?" He paused in the doorway, his shoulders tense. For a moment, Anna thought he might deflect the question, but then he came back and sat in the chair across from her, his hat in his hands. "Started about 2 years ago," he said quietly. "Right around the time the textile plant closed and half the town lost their jobs. People started falling behind on rent, utilities, loans. Sheriff Caldwell came up with what he called a community assistance program." Anna felt a chill run down her spine. Community assistance? That's what he called it in the newspaper. Said it was a way for struggling residents to work off their debts while contributing to the local economy. Made it sound like charity work. Cole's jaw tightened. What he didn't mention was that the work contracts were designed to never end. People working 16-hour days for room and board that barely covered their living expenses, while their debt somehow kept growing. "But that's illegal," Anna said, though even as she spoke the words, she realized how naive they sounded. "Technically, it's voluntary," Cole explained bitterly. "People sign contracts agreeing to work off their debts. The sheriff makes sure all the paperwork looks legitimate. And anyone who complains, well, let's just say Sheriff Caldwell has a long memory and a lot of friends in this county." Anna thought about the faces she'd seen in the crowd, the casual way they bid on her future, the acceptance in their eyes. How many people know what's really happening? More than you'd think. Some are actively involved. They get cheap labor and kickbacks from Caldwell. Others just look the other way because it doesn't affect them directly. And the rest? Cole shrugged helplessly. The rest are too scared to speak up. The baby kicked, and Anna winced slightly. Cole noticed immediately, his expression shifting to concern. "Are you all right? Do you need anything? I could call Doc Peterson." "I'm fine," Anna assured him, touched by his genuine worry. "The baby's just active today. Probably picked up on my stress." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the afternoon light filtering through the windows and painting golden squares on the hardwood floor. Anna found herself studying Cole's profile, noting the way his eyes crinkled at the corners and the silver threads in his dark hair. He couldn't be much older than 35, but he carried himself with the weight of someone who had seen too much loss. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. Cole nodded. "Your family, what happened?" The question seemed to physically pain him, but he answered anyway. Sarah was driving Emma home from a dance recital. It was raining, and some drunk tourist was speeding through town in his Mercedes. Ran a red light and hit them head-on. His voice was steady, but Anna could see his hands clenching and unclenching. Emma died on impact. Sarah lived long enough to get to the hospital, long enough for me to tell her I loved her. "Cole, I'm so sorry." "The man who killed them got 6 months in county jail," Cole continued, his voice hardening. "Judge said he didn't want to ruin a promising young man's future over one mistake. 6 months for 2 lives. Anna felt tears stinging her eyes. "That's not justice." "No," Cole agreed. "It's not. And I've been angry about it for 3 years. Angry at the drunk driver, angry at the judge, angry at a system that seems designed to protect the wrong people. But mostly angry at myself for not doing anything about it." "What could you have done?" Cole stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the pasture where his horses grazed peacefully. "I could have spoken up when the first auction happened. I could have asked questions when good people started disappearing into work contracts. I could have been the kind of man Sarah would have been proud of instead of hiding out here feeling sorry for myself." The pieces were starting to come together in Anna's mind. "That's why you paid my debt today. It wasn't just about helping me." "No," Cole admitted, "though I'm glad I could help you. But you're right, it was bigger than that. I watched those people bid on you like you were livestock, and I saw Sarah's face in my mind. I heard her voice asking me what kind of man I'd become. Anna struggled to her feet and joined him at the window. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It should have been peaceful, but she could feel tension radiating from Cole like heat from a fire. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we figure out how to expose what's really going on without getting ourselves killed in the process," Cole said grimly. "Because you can bet Sheriff Caldwell isn't happy about what happened today. And men like him don't like to be embarrassed." As if summoned by his words, the sound of vehicles approaching reached them through the window. Cole's body went rigid as two Sheriff's Department SUVs pulled into the driveway, their light bars flashing but sirens silent. "Stay inside," Cole said, his voice tight with tension. "And whatever happens, don't let them take you." Anna felt her heart racing as she watched Cole walk toward the front door, his shoulders straight and his jaw set. Through the window, she could see Sheriff Caldwell getting out of the lead vehicle, along with two deputies she didn't recognize. But it was the fourth man who made her blood run cold, the same expensive-suited stranger she'd seen talking to Caldwell at the courthouse. As Cole opened the front door to face whatever came next, Anna placed both hands on her belly and whispered a prayer for the child growing inside her. She had thought Cole's intervention had bought them safety, but she was beginning to realize that in Cedar Ridge, safety was something that had to be fought for, and the fight was just beginning. The baby kicked again, strong and insistent, as if it too understood that their lives had just become infinitely more complicated. Sheriff Caldwell stood on Cole's porch like he owned it, his thumbs hooked into his gun belt and his badge catching the last rays of afternoon sunlight. The two deputies flanked him with practiced ease, while the man in the expensive suit hung back by the vehicles, watching everything with the cold calculation of a predator studying its prey. "Evening, Cole," Caldwell said, his voice carrying false friendliness. "Mind if we come in? Got some questions about what happened at the courthouse today." "I mind," Cole replied evenly, not moving from the doorway. "You got questions, you can ask them right here." Anna watched from inside, positioned where she could see but hopefully not be seen. The baby had gone still inside her, as if sensing the danger in the air. Caldwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Now, Cole, that's not very neighborly. We just want to make sure there wasn't any misunderstanding about today's proceedings." "No misunderstanding," Cole said. "Young lady owed money, I paid it. Last I checked, that's still legal in Texas." One of the deputies shifted restlessly, his hand drifting toward his weapon. Anna recognized him as Tommy Reeves, who had been 2 grades behind her in high school and had never been particularly bright. The other deputy was older, harder looking, with the kind of eyes that had seen too much and lost the ability to be shocked by cruelty. "See, that's where things get complicated," Caldwell continued, stepping closer to Cole. "The girl signed a work contract. Legal and binding. By paying off her debt without going through proper channels, you may have interfered with the legitimate legal proceeding." Cole's laugh held no humor. "Legal? Marcus, you and I both know what's happening here isn't legal. It's slavery dressed up in paperwork." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Anna saw the older deputy's eyes narrow, and Tommy Reeves actually took a step back. Even they understood the weight of that accusation. "Now that's a serious charge, Cole," Caldwell said, his voice losing all pretense of friendliness. "Might want to be careful throwing around words like that. People might start thinking you don't appreciate the good work we do keeping this community safe." "Safe," Cole repeated. "Tell me, Marcus, how is selling desperate people to the highest bidder keeping anyone safe?" The man in the suit finally stepped forward, his movements precise and deliberate. Anna could see him more clearly now, middle-aged, with silver hair and the kind of tan that came from expensive vacations rather than honest work. His suit probably cost more than most people in Cedar Ridge made in a month. "Mr. Brennan," the man said, his voice cultured and smooth. "I don't believe we've been introduced. I'm Richard Millfield, president of Millfield Properties." Anna's blood ran cold. Millfield Properties, the company that owned her apartment, the company that had demanded the $3,000 that led to her being auctioned off like cattle. Cole's posture shifted slightly, and Anna could see him reassessing the situation. This wasn't just about Sheriff Caldwell's corruption anymore. This was about something bigger, more organized. "Mr. Millfield," Cole said carefully, "I take it you're not happy about losing your investment today." Millfield's smile was the practiced expression of a man accustomed to getting his way. "Mr. Brennan, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about how things work in Cedar Ridge. We have a system here, a way of handling problems that benefits everyone. Everyone except the people being sold." "The people being helped," Millfield corrected smoothly. Miss Rodriguez was facing eviction, potential criminal charges for theft of services. We provided her with an opportunity to resolve her debts through honest work. Honest work that never ends and barely pays subsistence wages. Millfield's facade cracked slightly. "Mr. Brennan, I'm going to speak plainly. You've disrupted a delicate ecosystem that has been beneficial to this entire community. Property owners get their debts resolved, employers get reliable workers, and people in difficult circumstances get a second chance. Everyone wins. Except the workers who disappear into contracts that never end. No one is forced to sign anything," Millfield said. "Every contract is voluntary. Every agreement is witnessed and notarized." Cole stepped forward, and Anna could see the anger building in his shoulders. "And what happens to people who refuse to sign? What happens to people who try to leave?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Anna saw the older deputy's hand move closer to his weapon, and she realized that this conversation was about to become something more dangerous. From inside the house, she could see more clearly now. Sheriff Caldwell's radio was crackling with static, and there was movement in the tree line beyond the pasture. This wasn't just a visit. This was a coordinated operation. Cole seemed to sense it too. His body tensed, and Anna saw him glance back toward the house, toward her. "Here's what's going to happen, Cole," Millfield said, all pretense of civility gone. "Miss Rodriguez is going to come with us. Her contract is still valid, regardless of who paid her debt. And you're going to forget about what you think you saw today." "And if I don't?" Millfield gestured toward the pasture, where Anna could now clearly see armed men moving through the shadows. "Then we'll have to discuss your outstanding property taxes. And your mortgage payments. And perhaps some irregularities in your cattle registration." Amazing how quickly paperwork can become problematic. Anna felt sick. This wasn't just corruption. This was organized crime, hidden behind badges and legal documents. And Cole was about to become their next victim because he had tried to help her. She made a decision that would change everything. Opening the front door, she stepped out onto the porch, her hands protective over her belly. "I'll go with you," she said quietly. Every eye turned to her, but it was Cole's expression that broke her heart, a mixture of admiration, anger, and desperate fear. No," he said firmly. "Go back inside." "Mr. Brennan is right," Millfield said, his voice oily with false concern. "This is a matter between adults. Please, go back inside." But Anna had seen enough. She had watched her mother work herself to death cleaning other people's houses for poverty wages. She had seen her father disappear into the shadows of immigration enforcement, too afraid to fight back against injustice. She had spent her whole life watching good people get crushed by systems designed to exploit them. "No," she said, her voice growing stronger. "I won't go back inside, and I won't go with you." Sheriff Caldwell stepped forward. "Young lady, you don't really have a choice here." "Everyone has a choice," Anna replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "The question is whether you're brave enough to make the right one." She turned to look at Cole, seeing in his eyes the same realization that had just hit her. They were past the point of compromise now. They had drawn lines in the sand, and there was no stepping back across them. "Cole," she said softly, "whatever happens next, I need you to know what you did today saved my baby's life. And that matters more than anything else." In the distance, Anna could hear the sound of more vehicles approaching. But this time, the sound was different, older engines, pickup trucks rather than government SUVs. And she saw something in Millfield's expression that hadn't been there before. The cavalry was coming, but Anna wasn't sure whose side they would be on. In a town where corruption had roots as deep as the oak trees, Allies and enemies could shift as quickly as shadows at sunset. The baby kicked once, hard, and Anna smiled grimly. Her child would be born into a world where people stood up for what was right, no matter the cost. Even if it killed them both. The sound of approaching pickup trucks grew louder, and Anna watched as Millfield's confident demeanor began to crack. Sheriff Caldwell was speaking rapidly into his radio, while the two deputies looked increasingly nervous. Whatever backup they had expected wasn't coming fast enough. Cole stepped closer to Anna, his body positioning itself protectively between her and the armed men. "Doc Peterson," he said quietly, recognizing the sound of one of the approaching engines. "And that sounds like Jake Martinez's truck." Anna felt a flutter of hope. Dr. Peterson had delivered half the babies in Cedar Ridge over the past 30 years, and Jake Martinez ran the feed store that kept most of the local ranchers in business. These weren't the corrupt officials and hired muscle that Millfield had been counting on. The first truck to pull into the driveway was indeed Doc Peterson's weathered Ford, followed closely by Jake's newer Silverado and two other vehicles Anna didn't immediately recognize. But as the men got out, she realized she knew most of them honest, working people who had probably been wondering for months why their neighbors kept disappearing into work contracts that never ended. Doc Peterson approached the porch first, his medical bag in hand and concern etched on his weathered face. At 73, he was one of the few people in town who remembered when Cedar Ridge had been a place where neighbors looked out for each other. "Evening, Marcus," he said to Sheriff Caldwell, his voice carrying decades of authority. "Got a call that there might be a pregnant lady in distress out here." "No distress, Doc," Caldwell replied, but his voice had lost its earlier confidence. "Just a routine matter regarding some unpaid debts." "Unpaid debts that require armed deputies and private security?" Jake Martinez stepped up beside Doc Peterson, his eyes taking in the men positioned around the property. "That seems like overkill for a civil matter." Millfield tried to regain control of the situation. "Gentlemen, this is a private property matter. Miss Rodriguez signed a legally binding contract to work off her debts. Mr. Brennan's interference has created complications that need to be resolved." "Resolved how?" Doc Peterson asked, his tone sharpening. "By forcing a pregnant woman to work under what conditions? For how long? And what happens to her baby when it's born?" Anna saw Millfield hesitate, and in that hesitation, she glimpsed the truth that everyone had been too afraid to confront. The babies born to women in these contracts, what happened to them? Were they considered part of their mother's debt? The thought made her physically sick. "The contracts are all legal," Millfield insisted, but his voice lacked conviction now. "Legal according to who?" A new voice called out. Anna turned to see Maria Santos climbing out of one of the other trucks. Maria was a paralegal who worked in the county seat, and she was carrying what looked like a thick folder of documents. "Maria," Cole said, surprise evident in his voice. "What are you doing here?" "My job," she replied grimly, approaching the group with purposeful strides. "When Doc Peterson called and told me what was happening, I pulled some files from the courthouse. Seems like someone's been very busy filing fraudulent documents." Sheriff Caldwell's face went pale. "Now wait just a minute, Maria. You can't just..." "I can't just what, Marcus? Do my job? Enforce actual laws instead of whatever system you and Millfield have cooked up." Maria opened her folder and pulled out a sheaf of papers. "These are the work contracts filed over the past 2 years. Want to know what's interesting about them?" The silence stretched taut as everyone waited for her to continue. "They're all identical. Same language, same terms, same impossible conditions for completion. And here's the really interesting part. They all list Millfield Properties as both the creditor and the contractor. That's illegal under Texas state law." Millfield stepped forward, his composure finally cracking completely. "You're interfering with legitimate business operations." "No," Maria shot back. "I'm exposing human trafficking. Because that's what this is, debt bondage disguised as employment contracts. And it's a federal crime." Anna felt the baby kick strongly, as if responding to the tension in the air. Cole noticed her wince and immediately moved closer. "Anna, are you all right?" "I think." She paused as another contraction rippled through her abdomen. I think the stress is triggering early labor. Doc Peterson dropped his authoritative demeanor and shifted into medical mode. How far along are you? 6 months, Anna gasped as another contraction hit. We need to get you to the hospital. Now. Doc Peterson turned to face the assembled group. This conversation is over. I have a patient who needs immediate medical attention. But Millfield wasn't backing down. The girl isn't going anywhere until this contract matter is resolved. It was Jake Martinez who moved first, stepping between Millfield and Anna with the quiet determination of a man who had spent his life doing physical work. Mr. Millfield, Jake said, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable edge. You're going to step aside and let Doc Peterson take care of this young lady. And then you and your friends are going to leave Cole's property. And if I refuse? Jake glanced around at the other men who had arrived, honest, hard-working people who had finally seen enough. Then we'll have a problem. Anna doubled over as another contraction hit, stronger this time. She could hear Doc Peterson giving orders, could feel Cole's strong hands supporting her, but the edges of her vision were starting to blur. Through the haze of pain and fear, she heard Sheriff Caldwell speaking into his radio again, his voice urgent now. But there was something in his tone that didn't sound like a man calling for backup. It sounded like a man trying to call off an operation that had gone sideways. This isn't over, Millfield said, but he was already backing toward his vehicle. Yes, it is, Maria Santos replied firmly. Because tomorrow morning, I'm filing charges with the state attorney general's office. And I'm calling the FBI field office in San Antonio. Human trafficking is a federal crime, Mr. Millfield. And so is conspiracy to commit human trafficking. As Anna was helped into Doc Peterson's truck, she caught one last glimpse of Millfield's face. The arrogant confidence was gone, replaced by the expression of a man who suddenly realized that his carefully constructed system was about to collapse around him. Cole climbed into the passenger seat beside her, his hand finding hers as Doc Peterson started the engine. Is the baby going to be okay? Anna asked, her voice tight with pain and worry. We'll do everything we can, Doc Peterson assured her. But babies are tougher than we think. And this little one has been through a lot today. As they drove toward the hospital, Anna looked back at the ranch where, just hours earlier, she had thought she might find temporary sanctuary. Instead, she had found something much more valuable, people willing to stand up for what was right, even when it was dangerous. The contractions were getting stronger, but Anna wasn't afraid anymore. Her child would be born free, in a community that was finally ready to confront the darkness that had been hiding in plain sight. And as the lights of the hospital came into view, Anna felt a deep certainty that whatever came next, her baby would grow up in a world where people like Cole Brennan and Doc Peterson and Maria Santos refused to let injustice masquerade as law. The reckoning had begun, and there was no turning back. Behind them, the lights of Cedar Ridge twinkled in the darkness, but Anna knew that by morning, the town would be forever changed. Some secrets, once exposed to the light, could never be hidden again. And some fights, once started, had to be finished, no matter the cost. The end.